A very warm good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Inclusive Finance India Summit 2020 organized by Access and Assist. I'd like to thank each one of you for joining us this early in the morning for this very important track, financial inclusion through self-help group model. India's self-help group bank linkage program was launched in 1992 as a flagship program by NABARD, with the objective to meet financial needs of the poor by linking Ssgs with formal credit agencies. The self-help group movement has emerged as the world's largest and most successful community-based poverty alleviation and empowerment program. And we are very excited to have dedicated a track to such an important component of financial inclusion into the discourse of this summit. This track has been curated in partnership with AP MAS, which is a not-for-profit public society with a prime focus on advancing self-help group ecosystem. And it is my privilege to introduce and invite Mr. C.S. Reddy, CEO AP MAS, to deliver the opening address and set the tone for the track.
Thank you very much, Priyampada. Thank you for that lovely introduction, brief. Good morning to all those who have joined this day 2 of the Inclusive Finance India Summit from all over the world. And I'm delighted on behalf of AP MAS to be part of this conference and to be anchoring this particular track. And I'm also very pleased and delighted that Mrs. Alka Upadhyay is the person giving keynote address, most critical, and I'll come back to that a bit later. But I will just give a quick overview of this particular track. I will just take a few minutes. So in this particular track on financial inclusion through Ssg model, we have 3 sessions, technical session 12, 13, and 14. So the first session after the keynote address by Mrs. Alka Upadhyay will be on Ssg bank linkage, the program, where it is today and what's the impact. The session 13 will be on financing challenge in graduating women Ssg members to entrepreneurship. And the session 14 will be, in a way, summing it up in terms of the self-reliance and sustainability of the Ssg federations. I'm sure Mrs. Alka Upadhyay will touch on the importance of the self-help group federations in the National Rural Livelihood Mission ecosystem. I thought maybe just as an introduction, there is a whole report on the Inclusive Finance India, which has been published, and there is a full chapter dedicated for the Ssg program, and I'm glad that Girija Srinivasan wrote it so beautifully. And I thought the first slide that I would share with you is the Ssg movement, which is now 30 years almost. It has different perspectives. There are perspectives related to poverty reduction, women's empowerment, financial inclusion, economic development of the local area, livelihood promotion, enterprise promotion, as a social justice initiative, improving local governance, and many more. I think the perspectives in a way, these are kind of different expectations on the self-help movement in the country. So I thought I'll just give you a quick status of where are we, nearly 3 decades of the Ssg movement. I prefer to use the word Ssg movement. And as AP MAS as an organization, we have been with this movement for nearly 20 years. So it has been our proud privilege to be an organization engaged in capacity building, research, policy advocacy, and with Access, we have done quite a number of initiatives. So in terms of where we are today, and this is some of it I picked up from Girija's chapter on self-help groups, 10 million plus groups, wonderful, the phenomenal, the largest community-based microfinance system in the world. So we have almost 26,000 crores of savings of the SHG women of these 10 million or 1 crore. And, you know, if you do the extrapolation, there is close to 3 times of that amount, because a lot of that savings is in circulation with the SHG members. Currently the loan outstanding is around 1,08,000 crores or 10,807 million, which is huge. So if you combine the savings, the grants that SHGs and SHG federations received, and the bank loans, you know, they are managing maybe 170,000 crores or more. There are certain pointers that I would like to mention. Of course, the National Rural Livelihood Mission is the flagship program that has been steering at the national level and coordinating with the State Rural Livelihood Mission in ensuring the sustainability of the SHG system in the country. This skewness we have observed over the past 25 plus years of SHG bank linkage. 40% of the savings linked groups are in South India. 60% of the savings amount in the banks of the SHGs is in South India. And in the year 1920, 50% of the bank loans disbursed is to the SHGs in South India. And 70% of today's loan outstanding is to the SHGs in South India. So while the number of SHGs have grown in other parts of the country, the quantum of loan or the loan size to those self-help groups has not grown significantly as expected. So that's a bit of an issue that one needs to look at, and I'm sure Alkaji will address. The other very interesting and important development is there are nearly 400,000 self-help group federations in the form of village organizations, cluster level federations, district level federations. These are institutions that sustain and provide value add services to the self-help groups in the country. So at this moment, there are a number of questions that we would be addressing in this track. From now till 2 p.m. To begin with, we will have Mrs. Alka Upadhyay, who will be giving the keynote address. So what are the prominent issues? I already mentioned it's a phenomenal achievement in terms of the linkage banking and the financial access that these SHGs have in the country. But quality and sustainability of this system is still something that one needs to think about. And I think we have a dedicated session today on how the SHGs graduate from microfinance to micro enterprises. And more importantly, what has been the impact related to poverty reduction, related to women's empowerment, related to livelihood promotion. I think that's something that we would be dealing with throughout the forenoon. What has been the role of SHG federations as service providers, as facilitators, as agencies that represent the interest of the women at the grassroots level, particularly in rural areas? I think one of the questions that I would like us to be debating today is, are these SHGs and their federations autonomous and independent in terms of, are they able to make their decisions? Are they able to be bottom up rather than being an agency for the government? There are, I'm sure, many other questions that the panelists will be addressing. So without further ado, I would like to invite Mrs. Alka Upadhyay, who is the keynote speaker for this morning. And she wears many caps. She is the mission director for the National Rural Livelihood Mission. She also looks after many other very important initiatives at the Government of India level, considered as the most important policy maker related to rural poverty reduction, women's empowerment, and livelihood promotion. It is so appropriate to have Mrs. Alka Upadhyay to speak to us, to share the journey of the National Rural Livelihood Mission, the achievements it has, how it has contributed to financial inclusion, and what are some of the challenges that the National Rural Livelihood Mission is facing in addressing issues of poverty and rural livelihoods. So thank you very much, Alkaji. We are pleased and delighted to have you with us, and we look forward to listening to you and get enriched with your long years of experience in the government of India. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reddy, and thank you, Priyamvada, for anchoring this very, very interesting and relevant session today. And just as Mr. Reddy was speaking, he also kind of reminded me of my responsibility towards this entire sector and program. So yes, indeed, I have been with the rural development now for a decade now. So I'm a veteran. So normal span of service is about 30 years, and 1/3 has been in the rural areas in the rural development department. And before that, with the as a field executive, also looking at most of the RD programs. From practice to state government to policy, it all appears like a continuum. National Rural Livelihood Mission, of course, I will not get into what it is and when did the journey start. But today we are at a juncture where the social capital in which we have invested over the last decade. So there have been various forms. The DFID project was there. The earlier form of Ssg was there. We used to work in the Dwakra, so on and so forth. So those are all the legacies that we have inherited. And finally, in the year 2013-14, this new National Rural Livelihood Mission was designed the way it is functioning today. The social capital was something in which NRLM has been consistently and very, very solidly investing in. So we are often also criticized for spending too much of time in this particular activity of the self-help groups. But I guess you need a baby to be nurtured to, grow from an infant stage, to a toddler, gradually making it walk and then making it run. So currently we are in that stage when the toddler in 2020 is in a position to almost run. The numbers in the self-help group domain today that exist in the country are fairly large as far as an RLM outreach is concerned. We have covered almost 7.2 crore women, mobilized into 66 lakh Ssgs. And I'm very happy at some of the questions which have been framed by Mr. Reddy, because those are really, really very important issues. And a recent study by the Niti Aayog, an independent study by the Niti Aayog, has questioned on the sustainability, which also brings into the fact that there needs to be a more serious and systemic investment in this category of people for which we are working. And the model has demonstrated its success across the world. It has, of course, demonstrated immense success in India. I will just take a detour over here. Yesterday, we were interviewing somebody for the farm livelihood team of ours. And one very interesting observation the person made was that, it's nice to be building into capacity of these women and making them into self-help group formations and the VOs and the cluster level federations. But to sustain that enthusiasm, you need something more. And what is that something more? There has to be a financial autonomy. There has to be a financial arm to this entire activity. Unless and until you strengthen this momentum may also gradually lose out. So now we're in that phase when we will, and I was really awestruck by the kind of clarity that the person has. Sometimes, it's an outsider comment which kind of wakes you up. Okay, so this is what needs to be done. And truly enough, we were very, very impressed by this. Now, financial inclusion, because now we are in that stage where we have to mobilize these women for better financial inclusion and thereafter take them onto an entrepreneurial journey. Now, an entrepreneurial journey of these first generation women who are also at the bottom of this entire pyramid of, if I would say, income, monthly income, they would really be at the bottom of the pyramid. Now, for all of these women to move up the pyramid or move up the ladder, there are few questions that need to be addressed. There are a few things. One, of course, is the financial inclusion, and second, how can they augment their livelihood? So various things have been done, but truly enough, the National Rural Livelihood Mission will now have to get out, or not get out really, but really will have to consolidate its efforts towards livelihood augmentation. This is also supported by the vision of the Honorable PM, where he has said that we need to provide livelihood to at least one member of each of the Ssg households. So that's a tall order. We are currently at 1:7, that out of the 7.21 crore women who have been kind of mobilized, 1 crore of our women have been organized in some kind of a farm or non-farm activity. So it's a very, very tall order, and we have to move quickly in that space. Now, since Access really looks after the financial inclusion part, I will come on to the financial inclusion issue. So, and before I move on to the financial inclusion part, because that is going to be the larger issue that we will discuss, the two other questions which have been raised about autonomy and Ssg Federation's roles. So these are very, very important questions. And a very interesting theory or a paradigm needs to be developed and discussed. Number one is the fact that these Ssgs have to be given that kind of confidence, that capacity building, which we have been working on. But autonomy for what? Autonomy in terms of taking decisions, and taking decisions for what? So till now they have been doing, that credit and thrift activities, but now to gauge the financial capability of women, to gauge the financial money that can be attributed towards entrepreneurial activities, that will require definitely some kind of an autonomy. But the important thing, and which is a very important and a good lesson to learn, is the Kerala model. So what did Kerala do differently? Not only did they invest into the Ssg movement, but they also tried to align them with the Panchayat Raj institutions, because that is where a lot of money, that is where a lot of decision making happens. And you would be very happy to hear in the recent elections, the local elections, a lot of our Ssg women were elected into the PRI institutions. So this balance will have to be taken into account while we are talking about complete autonomy, but we will also have to think about integration with the Panchayat Raj institutions. The Ssg federations are doing good as of now in wherever they have been given money, and the entire ripple effect of this is reflected in the good or in the very healthy NPA that we maintain. We are only at about 2.5% NPA with all the credit mobilization that has happened. So these are the positives. Now coming to the financial inclusion part, there are certain critical issues. One is the issue of this entire thing about financial literacy, and that to tide over the illiteracy or lack of awareness amongst the rural population, that's a challenge, and we need to circumvent that challenge, for which we need to have a very, very strong digital literacy campaign. Fortunately, COVID has taught us a lot of things. In the sense, the transactions through phone, because the banks were initially closed and there was a disruption of banking services, so a lot of the transactions have shifted over the phones. So mobile banking has become very healthy, and for this category of people, we will need to move into mobile banking or online banking, as we say. That is something important, and for which the banks will have to create these easy APIs or easy platforms for our women to access. Now, financial inclusion is, till date, we were only thinking that financial inclusion is, okay, open a bank account and all the transactions are made into the bank. But both Mr. Raghurajan earlier and RBI said it is not only the banking services, credit and debit. It is a whole lot of other products which have to be made available, which start from lending, which go on to insurance, which go on to other forms of activities, products, home loans, so on and so forth. So all of those things combined should be pulled in together to finally say, okay, we have reached financial inclusion and we have been able to deliver financial inclusion for this category of women. a lot of activities have happened. I'm just going to talk about a few of the policy initiatives that have happened. So RBI has been very, very proactive in promoting financial inclusion for this sector. The priority sector requirement of banks, establishment RRBs, and self-help group linkage program, that itself has been the onset of this entire gamut that we are talking about. In February 2001, with the initiative of Swabhiman, the Indian Banking Association had launched this program for financial inclusion, and it looked at opening up of banks, etc. The most critical thing that has happened is in the year 2014, when the PMJDY was introduced, and banks at that point in time thought that what an activity is this, and they were truly bogged down by it. But we have seen the ease or the vision of the Prime Minister at that point in time in opening the PMJDY accounts. Today, most of our schemes in the rural areas are now DBT. The biggest program that we have, that is of MG and REGS, the one that we have on PMAYG, everything is happening as a DBT. But the biggest thing that happened was the transfer of ex gratia payment to the PMJDY bank holders, women account holders during the time of crisis. So one click, and within 7 days, the entire country received that bank account, bank ex gratia payment through the banking system. So that was essentially a teaching that, yes, this is so important and we need to move forward in this. The RBI also initiated the requirements that banks should have the no-frill accounts, so on and so forth, which has helped us a lot. Then the National Health Insurance Protection Scheme that has come through, again, goes through the credit linkage and goes through the route of the banks. So all of these have been creating that atmosphere where now banking activity has become a mandate. Now, SSG, in fact, Mr. Reddy did briefly mention about what has happened in that fray. A lot of our women have been able to access credit. Today, the amount of bank credit access by SSGs has seen a great improvement year on year. And from 2000 in the year 2013-14, we were at US dollars 3.1 billion. And today, as I speak, in 2019-20 figures are 9.5 billion. So it has seen a very dramatic increase. And I think that's a very, very healthy sign. The only issue is, what is the use of, if you see the amount of credit that has gone in, I always put this question before my team, that if this is the kind of credit that has gone into the accounts of our women, the rural economy should be transformed, should have been transformed. That's a lot of money. How was it utilized, and what was the impact? Now, we did a small sample and we tried to find out what is happening with the money that the women are using. The money that they have been using is for agriculture or dairy. So 55 or 60% of the money has been used for the agriculture and non-farm activities for dairy, fisheries, etc., which is gainful employment or gainful utilization of the money that they have used. The other big chunk has been used for education of their children. So all of this money has been very, very gainfully employed, but we will need to follow this up even further and see that the amount of the money which has gone into the bank accounts is used for sustainable livelihood purposes. And as National Rural Livelihood National Management Unit, it is our duty. So recently, we had a World Bank loan, and we said during the time of crisis that the CIF should be increased, and the revolving fund that we give to the women should be increased. Now that is also a point that I wanted to mention as an answer to Mr. Reddy's question. The self-help group federations are taking these activities very seriously, whom to give the money and what to be given for, and the entire bookkeeping and record keeping has been very, very well strengthened and streamlined. And we also gave a mandate at that point in time that while the CIF and the RF has been given to you, increased amounts have been given, but you also need to use them for livelihood purposes, small backyard poultry, dairy units, so on and so forth. So that the portfolio diversification for livelihood activities also increases. The last mile delivery is something which will need to be improved even further. And when I speak of last mile delivery, the entire Northeast is really very poorly serviced at this point in time. And there I find the role of many of the NBFCs, the private institutions, the so to say, civil services, civil societies, the organizations which are working like APMAS is working or Access, they need to step in these areas and improve the financial linkage, because banking activities are happening, but at the same time, there is a gap which needs to be fulfilled. We embarked upon this program of training the 10,000 banking Ssgs, and we have been able, this has been a great success. And I will like to quote an example that during this pandemic time, these banking Ssgs were able to go and deliver money to the old and the destitute, their pension incomes. So they are being used as an important vehicle for reaching out to the poorest of the poor, the infirm, etc. So this entire banking correspondent model, or the banking correspondent Ssgs, will have to be strengthened further if we really want to talk about inclusion. I also would like to mention over here that in the past we've been able to do good in social protection, but there is a need to have a universal coverage as far as social protection is concerned. And again, for this, the partners who are participating today in this forum, there is a need for increased product refinement, which can be of use to these women because of the appetite that has increased. So we need to service them not only from the public sector banks, but the RRBs, the financial institutions, and so on and so forth. So we need to come up with these products very, very rapidly. We need to integrate the MIS. We need to also see how the loans are performing. So all these activities and hand-holding, if it is done, it would be of great use. Now I'll come to the last part. My last part pertains to that of promoting entrepreneurial activity. And as I had said initially, the first generation Ssg members who have no bank history or credit history, so to say, or even if they have a credit history, it is of a very, very small volume. Now, if they are able to move forward in the entrepreneurial aspirations, if they are to move forward, we need to make them available a couple of things. First being, what do we do about the working capital? Now, working capital is something which is not really available or easily available to women entrepreneurs. I was very happy that the next technical session is relating to women entrepreneurship. And I'm sure a lot of positive things would emerge out of that session. But that is something that I would like to address. And we need to lobby with the RBI, we need to lobby with the banking institutions, with the IBA, to create that ease of giving working capital to at least this category of women. And I will also like to say that although there are disparities even in and I'm now coming to the next point as to what are the bankers' fears, the NPAs may be higher, a little higher across the region in certain states. There is a constant effort by the federations, by the CLFs to bring this NPA down, and we are committed to this. It is only because of this that today the bankers do have a certain amount of ease in lending to our SHG federations, the other our SHG members. The other thing is on which we are working, I don't know how we will get an access or how we will get success in this, how to make our CLFs and VOs bankable. So today, SHG members can be banked, but our our CLFs and our VOs cannot get financing. So unless and until they go through the registered formal route. So this is something that needs to be taken up. The entire aspect of enterprise financing is very, very important. We have been working very closely with all the partners the state governments, the SRLMs, the NABARD and banking institutions, people like the Access and many other civil society organizations. But I think that's something that we will need to address very closely. Last point, and being the most important point, this inter-regional disparity. I know I'm exceeding by just about a minute or two, but please allow me to complete this, because that's a very, very important thing. So,
yes, please.
So, the entire SHG movement, if you know, emanated from the South, and they were the front leaders. But today, the success stories are not from Tamil Nadu, not from Telangana and Andhra Pradesh or Karnataka. The success stories today are from Jharkhand, from Bihar Jivika program, from Chhattisgarh, from Madhya Pradesh. They are the front leaders today. The work being done by Ormas in Orissa, they are the front leaders. Now, to meet that gap, but also the lending that was happening in the southern part of India, if you remember Mr. V.K. Jain, Deputy Governor RBI's report, this is all gold loan. So whatever they are getting, they're investing in gold, and it is not really going back into the economy. So the quality of loan which is being given or being utilized is also needs to be monitored. And that is why we have been saying that we are closely going to monitor your deployment of funds so funged from the banks. The interesting thing is, although 50%, as Mr. Reddy said, 50% of the loaning still happens in the southern part of India, but also remember that we were about 10% and 15% and 20%, which has gone up to 50%. So that's a very, very healthy movement. And we know that states like Uttar Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh also with strong program. Uttar Pradesh, of course, was not a very strong SRLM, and the activities are now getting initiated in Uttar Pradesh. But even in Madhya Pradesh, unfortunately, the bank linkage didn't happen. So, that entire transition from capacity building, confidence building, organizing has now to shift towards financial inclusion, towards enterprise development, and ultimately, it's that women empowerment which has to come to the fore, and we want to see successful women entrepreneurs. And it's this problem, it does not pertain only to our category of women in the rural areas. This women enterprise, as I was reading a paper, is very difficult even in the urban areas. As such, women entrepreneurial development needs a special focus. Various things have been done in the past. For example, there was an announcement which said that collateral-free loan limit to be increased from 10 lakhs to 20 lakhs, OD limit to each member, one member from each SHG, and the mudra loans, etc. So all those things have been talked about. We are now wanting to give a bit of a protection to our SHG groups as far as their enterprises are concerned, and many of the states have done that already. So with this, they will be able to build their own capital, and I'm sure be able to get more financing. So it's a very interesting journey, and a lot more has to be done. I'm sure we will be able to meet the goals, and collectively, all of us together would be able to achieve this vision of bringing women to the fore as entrepreneurs. That entire philosophy needs to be changed now, that women cannot be good entrepreneurs. We need to invest ourselves in this. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Alka ji. That's wonderful, and I must say very inspiring, very positive, and that too, the women leader speaking, who heads the largest women's empowerment program in the country. I just have, Priyambada, I'll just say a couple of points based on what Alka ji said, and then I'll hand it over to you, Priyambada. I know we are 10 minutes behind, but I think the next session has a bit more time. Number one, Alka ji, I think you are spot on in saying that, the skewness has reduced significantly. I totally agree with you. And I think NRLM has played a very, very important role over the past several years. I think, one important aspect that I want to mention or draw to your attention is the optimum utilization of the savings in SHGs. I think that is one area which hasn't, we always focus on loan. Somehow savings remain in a bank account, and it is the banker who seems to benefit and not the SHGs who have saved. So the fact that 26,000 rupees, 26,000 crores is sitting in a bank account on 31st March of 2020 is the money that's not working for the poor women who saved that money. So that's one point I want to mention. Second, I think the financial inclusion is now tremendous in India with Jan Dhan, the JAM. So I think the role of the SHGs and federations is much beyond financial inclusion. And I agree with you about the whole enterprise promotion, poverty reduction. There, I was thinking that a time maybe has come for NRLM to consider engaging with some of the NGOs that have been in the forefront of the SHG system 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. So this may be a time for the National Rural Livelihood Mission to do a kind of a brainstorming on what might be the critical role that NGOs can play in the enterprise promotion. And the third and last point I'll make and then stop there. SHG federations, I think they have tremendous potential as agencies of the women, agencies of the self-help groups. The only request I have to NRLM and SRLMs is, how do we make them autonomous of the government? We don't want these SHG federations to emerge as agencies of the state. They must be the agencies of the women. And I think it's a difficult task when government is involved, but I think it must be the endeavor of the National Rural Livelihood Mission to ensure that the SHGs and their federations move in the direction of being the organizations with autonomy and independence. Thank you so much. We immensely benefited from your